Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's lecture on improving interviewing skills. Interviewing for a job can be pretty nerve-wracking, and it's an area within job search that a lot of people struggle with. And a big reason for that is because of the lack of preparation and practice. In today's short lecture, I will be talking about my 8-step interview plan. Though the 8-step plan can be implemented for all types of interviews, including phone and video interviews, it is specifically designed for in-person interviews. More information on interview types will be addressed later in the module. Let's begin. In my interview plan, I will dive into the details of each plan, which includes number 1, compare your skills to the job qualifications. Number 2, research the company. Number 3, plan what to wear. Number 4, plan what to bring. Number 5, pay attention to nonverbal communication. Number 6, practice answering questions. Number 7, finish and follow up. And number 8, send a thank you. By following these steps, you will be better prepared as an interviewee for your next big job interview. Step number 1, compare your skills to the job qualifications. By now, you've already done this at least once in order to tailor your resume to the job description, so this is not something new. However, it is something that should be done prior to interviewing, so be sure to review the job description again and be more critical when looking at the responsibilities of the job as well as the qualifications. Compare this to the resume you tailored the job to and think about the examples of how you've demonstrated some of the skills you've used in previous work or school experience. You should be able to come up with at least one example for each skill you have listed in your resume, because it is likely that your potential employer will ask you about them. Step number 2, research the company. I've shared with you different online resources where you can research the company to learn more about who they are, what they do, and what they're about. Almost every company has a website, and on their website, you'll be able to read their mission statement and learn more about their background. If the website has a directory, you might be able to find out who is interviewing you and research the person further through their company website if they have employee profiles or using LinkedIn. Be sure to study the company's products, services, and/or client base. This will help you answer the question, what do you know about our company, or why do you want to work for us? By researching the company, you will also be able to formulate questions for the end of the interview when you're asked, do you have any questions for us? Step number 3, plan what to wear. Dress to impress, make sure your clothes are neat and wrinkle-free. Use good judgment when deciding on your interviewing outfit. The position and the company in which you are interviewing for can determine your attire, depending on if it's more business environment or an informal work environment. And also, usually the higher the position, the more business professional you want to dress. If it is a more informal work environment, then business casual is more recommended. Generally speaking, conservative business attire with neutral colors and dress shoes are best. Neutral colors include blue, brown, tan, black, and gray. When in doubt, I always say it's better to dress up than to dress down, because dressing your best helps you feel your best, which will boost your self-confidence and help you ace your interview. I also want to point out that you want to be mindful regarding the perfumes or colognes you wear. It's possible that you might be in a small room when interviewing, and some people may be sensitive to certain smells. I'd also like to include having good hygiene, making sure that you're looking your best, and sometimes your first impression can have an overall effect on how your interview goes. Step number 4, plan what to bring. Bring extra copies of your resume on quality paper. You're probably wondering why, that the employer should probably already have it. Well, it's just in case. And in case they've misplaced it or they forgot to print it out prior to your interview, then you'll have it on hand. Imagine pulling out extra copies of your resume and showing the interviewer how prepared you are. That's extra points without answering any questions yet. You also want to bring a notepad and pen to take any notes or write down any important information. Nowadays, everyone has a smartphone and can just write things down, but during an interview, you don't want to bring your phone out unless it's really necessary. You also want to be sure to ask the interviewer if you're allowed to take notes. Sometimes, for confidentiality reasons, companies will not let you do so. You also want to bring a list of references and other materials to complete the application process, which sometimes can include certificates, transcripts, fingerprinting, or any employment verification documents. If you ace your interview, the employer may want to contact your references right away. Lastly, if relevant, bring a portfolio of your work samples. This is usually for those who are in the art and design related fields. Step 5. Pay attention to nonverbal communication, specifically when you're practicing your interviewing skills because it will translate to when you're actually interviewing. Practice your handshake with the people you live with or those you feel comfortable practicing with. The handshake should be firm with 2 or 3 shakes, all while smiling and making eye contact with the recipient. When practicing answering your questions, be mindful of your body language. Are your arms folded? Are you sitting up straight or slouching in your chair? Are you tapping your foot? All of these signs can be red flags for the employer. When listening to the interview questions or if someone has something to explain to you, be an active listener. This means maintaining eye contact as they are speaking and nodding politely. Lastly, stay positive, professional, and present. What this means is when you stumble over some words, stutter, or ramble on during your answer, don't let that affect the next question or the next few questions. Compose yourself, take a few deep breaths, and remember that you are interviewing because the employer wants you there. Here are some additional do's and don'ts when it comes to body language. When you cross your arms, it tells the employer that you're not interested in being there. If you're tapping your feet or biting your lip or nails, it tells the employer that you're nervous. Also, when we get nervous, before we speak, it'll feel like there's a huge lump in our throat. And we will naturally keep clearing our throat and go, or so bring a bottle of water and take a sip when you begin to feel that lump. Also, another little tip, if you are asked a tough interview question and need some time to gather your thoughts, take a drink from your water bottle. Do it slowly so that you can give yourself an extra 5 to 10 seconds to formulate your answer. If you do this correctly, no one will even notice. Step number 6, practice answering potential questions. There's no secret to becoming better at job interviewing. It simply takes practice. The more you practice, the better you become at answering questions. Look on page 9 of the interviewing handbook. Answering these common interview questions should be second nature because regardless of who is interviewing you or what job you're interviewing for, these questions will be asked. For industry or job-specific questions, you will need to do additional research. Glassdoor is a great place to start. However, searching Google will also yield helpful tips. For example, just type in Google technical interview questions for accountants or interviewing questions for software engineers. And you should be able to find some specific questions to those jobs. There are 3 ways I recommend practicing. First, practice out loud and by yourself. You also can practice and record yourself with video so you can hear your answers and see your own body language. And lastly, practice with a friend or family member and ask for feedback. Ask for real constructive feedback. They are not doing you any favors if they are not being genuine and honest. And when you're done practicing answering questions, find someone to do a full mock interviewing with. The Career Center offers this service just in case you didn't already know. The more you practice, the more confidence you'll gain. And I can't emphasize enough how big of a role confidence plays in how you portray yourself in an interview. Too much confidence can come off as cocky and sometimes arrogant, so it's important to know when to dial it down. but having too little confidence will also affect you negatively. Having confidence, unfortunately, is not something I know how to teach, but it is something that comes from within and something that can be built over time. Thorough preparation and thorough practice will help you build that confidence. Step number 7, finish and follow up. The interview will end with, "Do you have any questions?" or "Do you have any questions for us?" You should always have 2 or 3 questions prepared, either from doing your research in the earlier steps or using the questions listed on page 12 of the interviewing handbook. My personal favorite questions to ask from page 12 of the interviewing handbook are number 9 and 10. Number 9 is, does your organization support ongoing training, education, or professional development for employees to stay current in their fields? And number 10, what do you think is the greatest opportunity or challenge facing the organization in the near future? I really enjoy number 9 and 10 because for number 9, it expresses to the employer that you are already committed to your position and looking to move forward and to progress with your jobs and your job skills. At number 10, it shows the employer that you're looking to solve their problems and you're looking to be a contributing member and helping them with whatever issues and challenges they have. Do not ask any questions where the answers have already been discussed or if the answers can be found on the company's website. It will show them that you did not pay attention or you did not do your research. Also, do not ask questions about benefits or pay. Never ever ask about this. You can only ask about benefits or pay once you've been offered a position. That is the only time it is appropriate to ask. Lastly, give employers at least 1 week before following up about the status of the position. Be patient and remember that the average time it takes from applying for a position to receiving an offer takes over 3 weeks. When you do follow up, whether it's through email or phone, be polite and professional. Step number 8, sending a thank you. Though this is technically not a step in preparing you or helping you improve your interviewing skills, it is a helpful step in the interviewing process. You always want to send a thank you card, letter, or email after your interview, either later in the day after your interview or the very next day. It will help the employer remember who you are. In your thank you, try to reference a specific moment you've had in your conversation or during your interview with the recipient. In addition, in your thank you email, you'll get an opportunity to fix any missteps during your interview, so you can rephrase anything that you put poorly during the interview or mention something if you forgot to mention it earlier. It also allows you to reaffirm your candidacy by saying something like, after interviewing for this position, my interest for this position has grown and I'm so grateful for, or after interviewing and learning more about the position, I am even more excited to join the XYZ team. Lastly, sending a thank you also creates an opportunity for the interviewer to ask any follow-up questions. So you want to make sure to end the thank you letter with, if there are any further questions about my qualifications or any details on my resume, please let me know. Please note that a thank you email is not a follow-up email. Please keep these separate. As I mentioned earlier, your follow-up will come about a week after your interview, and a thank you email will be sent within hours to a day of your interview. Here's an interview checklist. Visit interview location before the interview. This is really important because it gives you time to get familiar with the building or the general location of where the interview will be held. And it'll also allow you to test the commute time that it takes to get from your house to the interview location. This is also helpful because by visiting the location beforehand, it will seem familiar to you on the day of your interview, and it won't feel like this is the first time that you've been to this location. You also want to eat a healthy and hearty breakfast. I highly recommend avocado and eggs. It's simple brain food and can really help with staying sharp and alert. You also want to make sure that you have directions to the interview. This goes in with also figuring out how long it takes to get to your interview location, whether that's through public transportation or through driving your own car. You also want to plan out your outfit. I encourage students to plan out their outfit a few days in advance and not the night before your interview. For some people, this might be their first interview in a long time, and their lucky interviewing outfit might have a missing button or might not be clean. So it's important to check a few days in advance what you'll be wearing to your interview in case there are any mishaps that you need to fix prior to your actual interview day. Other items on the checklist include cash for parking or transportation, and of course, what I mentioned earlier in step 4 of what to bring, which are copies of your resume, your reference list, portfolio, business cards, and be sure to turn your cell phone on silent or turn it off. I also highly recommend having an interview cheat sheet and to arrive at your interview about 15 to 20 minutes early. That will allow you some time to study and to show the employer that you are on time. Group activity, mock interviewing. Traditionally, when I've taught this class in person, this is when we would get into small groups and have students practice their interviewing questions. 3 of the most common questions, and sometimes the toughest questions for students, are listed here. The first one is, tell me about yourself and your experience. Number 2, what are your strengths and weaknesses? And number 3, describe a challenge or a conflict you've experienced. How did you overcome or resolve it? These questions are part of this week's discussion board. Students will write out their answers, look at the discussion board for instructions on how to complete this activity. That concludes today's lecture on interviewing. You can now move on to the next part of the module.